It was a regular Thursday afternoon when Jake found himself walking down the crowded streets of the city. The sun was beginning to dip behind the tall buildings, casting a soft orange glow across the bustling sidewalks. People were rushing home from work, some distracted by their phones, others chatting with friends, and a few just lost in their thoughts. Jake was no different, his mind drifting between the usual worries of life. He had just finished a long day at the office and was eager to get home to relax. As he passed by a small park, something caught his attention. It was a woman, standing in the middle of the square, handing out flyers to passers-by. At first glance, she seemed out of place, too calm, too serene for the usual rush of the city. But what really drew Jake's gaze was her appearance. She was tall, much taller than most people in the area, and her skin shimmered like the pale moonlight, a soft blue hue that seemed to glow in the dimming light. Her silver hair flowed down her back in smooth waves, catching the light like polished metal. Her eyes were a striking shade of violet, deep and bright, giving her an otherworldly presence. She stood there, unbothered by the busy crowd around her, handing out flyers with a kind smile. At first, Jake thought she might be part of some new marketing campaign, or perhaps promoting an event. But as he got closer, he saw the words on the flyer, "Looking for a spouse, willing to consider all races, freedom of choice guaranteed." Jake slowed his pace, staring at the flyer in confusion. He had seen plenty of strange ads and promotions in his time, but this one stood out. Not only did it seem oddly personal, but it also felt unusual. There was no hint of corporate branding or even a formal logo. Just a simple statement, almost as if it were an invitation rather than an ad. Looking for a spouse? Jake thought to himself, his curiosity piqued. He had never seen anything like it. People who were serious about relationships rarely put up signs like this. What kind of person would be so open about looking for a spouse, let alone so publicly? As he continued watching, he noticed something even stranger. People were taking the flyers without hesitation. Some chuckled and walked on, while others seemed genuinely intrigued. A few even stopped to chat with the woman. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, just a natural acceptance of what she was offering. Jake, intrigued but still unsure, decided to approach. He walked up slowly, his feet dragging as he wondered what exactly was going on. When he finally reached her, the alien woman turned toward him, her violet eyes meeting his with a calm intensity. "Would you like one?" she asked, her voice smooth and melodic, like a gentle breeze on a summer day. Jake hesitated. He wasn't sure what to say. The flyer in her hand felt heavy, almost as if it carried more than just paper. He couldn't explain it, but he had this sense that something important was happening right in front of him. After a moment, he finally took the flyer from her hand. Sure," he said, his voice a bit awkward. "What's this all about?" The woman smiled, her expression warm but mysterious. "I'm offering freedom," she said simply. "Freedom to choose. Freedom to find what you truly desire without the boundaries of society's rules." Jake blinked, unsure if he had heard her right. "What do you mean, freedom?" "Freedom in love," she explained. "A chance to choose a partner based on your own desires without restrictions. No rules, no judgment. Just a true connection." Jake stared at her, still not fully grasping what she meant. "So you're looking for a spouse, and you're handing out flyers like this?" The woman nodded. "Yes. I am Lyra, from the planet Sci-Fi. My people believe in the freedom of choice in all aspects of life, including who we choose to be with. I am here to share this with the people of Earth." Jake's mind raced. She was from another planet? And she was asking for a spouse, so openly? He had heard of aliens before, of course. The news always had stories about possible extraterrestrial life, but seeing one standing right in front of him, handing out a flyer, was something entirely different. "What do you mean by freedom of choice? You just pick anyone?" Jake asked, his voice filled with a mix of curiosity and disbelief. Lyra's smile deepened, and she looked around as though considering her words carefully. "Yes, on Zafara we are not confined by societal expectations. We do not have arranged marriages, no pressure to follow certain traditions or norms. We choose our partners freely, based on what feels right in our hearts, not what others tell us to do." Jake's head was spinning. "So, you just find someone and that's it? No rules?" "No rules," Lyra said firmly. "Our love is pure, free from the restrictions that often cause pain and suffering. We believe in the power of individual choice." Jake stared at her for a moment, trying to process what she was saying. He had never considered relationships in such an open, unstructured way. In his world, people often followed certain paths, finding a partner through dating apps, meeting at work, or being introduced through friends. But there were always boundaries, whether they were social expectations, cultural differences, or even family pressure. The idea of simply choosing anyone, freely, without any consequences or rules, felt both exhilarating and terrifying at the same time. "So, how does it work? You just talk to people?" Jake asked, still not fully understanding. Lyra nodded. "Yes, we meet, we talk, and if we feel a connection, we pursue it. There is no pressure, no obligation, just the freedom to choose who we wish to spend our time with. You may choose one person or many, as long as it feels right." Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. It was a stark contrast to the dating culture on Earth, where people often followed specific rules or felt the weight of society's judgment. Here, on this alien world, it sounded like freedom. Freedom in its purest form. "So you're really just giving people the freedom to choose?" Jake asked, trying to wrap his mind around it. "That's right," Lyra replied. "And I'm here to show Earth how it can be done. No fear, no shame, just honest, open connection." As she spoke, something about her presence felt undeniably compelling. Jake didn't know what it was, but he felt an undeniable pull. There was something genuine in her words, something that resonated deep inside of him. Before he could say anything else, Lyra smiled again, her eyes twinkling with an unspoken understanding. "Take your time. Think about what true freedom could feel like." Jake nodded, still holding the flyer in his hand. As Lyra walked away, continuing to hand out more flyers to curious onlookers, he found himself standing there, lost in thought. What if she was right? What if humans had been living with too many restrictions, too many rules that stopped them from truly connecting? The words freedom of choice echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just encountered something that could change everything. The following day, Jake couldn't get the mysterious woman Lyra out of his mind. He had tried to focus on his work, but every time his thoughts wandered, they seemed to circle back to her and the strange concept she had introduced. The idea of freedom in relationships, where there were no restrictions, no expectations, no societal pressures, it was unlike anything Jake had ever considered. It was liberating, yet terrifying at the same time. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the city, Jake decided to return to the cafe where he had seen her the day before. His mind raced with questions, but the curiosity was too strong to ignore. He had to know more about her, about what she was offering. When he arrived, he spotted her right away. Lyra was sitting at a table near the window, her silver hair glowing in the fading light. She seemed completely at ease, a stark contrast to the hustle and bustle of the cafe around her. Jake took a deep breath and walked over to her, unsure of what he would say or how to approach the conversation. "Excuse me," Jake said, his voice a little shaky. "I was hoping I could ask you a few questions." Lyra looked up from the book she had been reading, her violet eyes meeting his with a calm, knowing gaze. "Of course," she said with a smile, her voice as smooth as it had been the day before. "I knew you would come." Jake hesitated for a moment, feeling the weight of the moment. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday," he began, "about the freedom of choice and how you choose your partners based on what feels right, without all the rules and expectations we have on Earth. I don't know, it just seems so different from what I'm used to." Lyra set the book down on the table and motioned for him to sit. "Please have a seat. I understand that this may be difficult to grasp at first. The idea of complete freedom in relationships is not something that is common on Earth. But that is why I am here, to show you another way." Jake sat down across from her, still unsure of how to navigate the conversation. "But doesn't it seem a little chaotic? I mean, on Earth we have traditions, we have ways of doing things. People meet, date, form relationships, and yes, sometimes things don't work out. But we have rules for a reason, don't we?" Lyra leaned forward slightly, her expression thoughtful. "On Sci-Fi, we do not see rules as necessary when it comes to love. We believe that love cannot be confined by expectations. It is something personal, something that must be chosen freely, from the heart, without interference from anyone or anything. Imagine a world where you are not judged for who you choose to love, where you are not pressured to follow certain standards of what a relationship should look like. Doesn't that sound like a world of true freedom?" Jake felt a twinge of doubt, but also a flicker of intrigue. But if everyone is just doing whatever they want, doesn't that lead to chaos? Aren't there consequences when people don't follow some kind of structure? Like heartbreak or misunderstandings? Lyra's eyes softened and she nodded. "Yes, there are always risks in any relationship. But that is part of the beauty of true freedom. People are free to make their own decisions, to experience love in their own way. They may face pain, yes, but they also experience joy, understanding, and connection on their own terms. The key is that they are never forced into something they do not want. Jake shifted in his seat, still processing her words. I don't know. I've seen people on Earth who struggle with relationships, and sometimes they do things just because they feel pressured. It seems like there's a lot of emotional baggage, and I'm not sure that's something I want to deal with. What if it doesn't work out? What if people get hurt? Lyra smiled as though she had anticipated his concerns. It's true that pain exists in relationships, but pain is not the enemy. It is simply a part of life. We learn, we grow, and we move forward. The beauty of freedom is that you can choose when to stay and when to leave. You are not trapped by anyone else's expectations. You are free to make the choices that feel right for you. Jake wasn't sure how to respond. His entire life he had been taught that relationships were about compromise, about finding someone who fit within the framework of what society deemed appropriate. But Lyra was speaking of something entirely different, a way of connecting with others that was not about fitting into a mold, but about truly understanding and choosing each other without restriction. I'm still not sure, Jake admitted. I mean, I've seen people in my life who have fallen in and out of love, and it's always complicated. The emotions get tangled, and not everyone walks away happy. It just seems like we're always trying to live up to other people's standards, and it's exhausting. Lyra nodded, her expression understanding. I understand. But that is precisely why we do things differently on Sci-Fi. Love is not something to be controlled or forced. It is an experience to be shared, to be lived, and to be celebrated. Imagine a world where you could choose freely, without fear of judgment or disappointment. Jake stared at her for a moment, trying to picture such a world. He could see it in his mind, a world where people were free to choose who they wanted to be with, without the baggage of societal expectations. It seemed almost too perfect, too ideal to be true. So, how do you find someone? Jake asked, his curiosity growing. Do you just meet people and decide on the spot? Or is there something more to it? Lyra leaned back in her chair, her gaze distant for a moment. It's not random, she said softly. It's about connection. True connection. When you meet someone, you feel it. An understanding, a spark that is beyond words. It is not about looks or status. It is about the bond that is formed naturally, without the pressure of expectations. Jake felt a flicker of excitement at the idea. What would it be like to meet someone and just know? To not worry about fitting into a mold, to not worry about whether or not you were good enough for the other person. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. So you're telling me that I could just meet someone and know right away? No doubts, no second guessing? Jake asked, the idea sounding almost too simple. Lyra smiled, her eyes sparkling with a gentle wisdom. Yes, it is that simple, but it requires trust. Trust in yourself, trust in the other person, and trust in the process of choice. You must be willing to be open, to be vulnerable, and to embrace the freedom that comes with it. Jake was quiet for a long moment, his mind racing. He thought about his own experiences with relationships, how they had often been dictated by outside forces. Family expectations, cultural norms, fear of rejection, and he thought about how, despite all of that, he had always felt something was missing. Could it be that freedom, true freedom, was the missing piece? Could it be that he had been living a life bound by invisible chains? Chains that he didn't even realize were there? I don't know if I'm ready to just throw away everything I've been taught, Jake said quietly. But at the same time, there's something about what you're saying that makes sense. Maybe there's more to relationships than what we see on Earth. Maybe we've been doing it all wrong. Lyra's smile widened and she reached across the table to gently touch his hand. It is not about throwing away what you know, Jake. It is about expanding your mind, your heart to new possibilities. You are free to choose. And that choice, no matter how it turns out, will always be yours. Jake looked down at their hands, the warmth of her touch sending a strange shiver through him. He felt a pull, a connection, though he didn't understand it fully. He wasn't sure if he was ready to embrace a completely new way of thinking, but a part of him, deep down, wanted to know more. So, what now? Jake asked, his voice filled with a new sense of curiosity. What happens next? Lyra stood up, her silver hair flowing around her like a halo. Now you begin your journey, she said softly. The journey of choice, of freedom, and I will be here whenever you are ready to explore it further. As Jake watched her leave, he felt a shift inside of him. A seed had been planted. He didn't know where this journey would take him, but for the first time, he was open to the idea of exploring a different path, one where freedom, choice, and connection were the only rules. Over the next few days, Jake found himself thinking about Lyra and her words more than ever. The idea of true freedom, of being able to choose who you wanted to be with without the weight of expectations or societal norms, had lodged itself deep in his mind. He found himself looking at the relationships around him, his friends, his family, even his coworkers, and seeing them in a new light. How much of their relationships were truly their choice? How much of it was shaped by the world around them? He couldn't help but wonder, what if it was possible to choose love without the pressure of rules? What if love could be free, not confined by time, place, or societal expectations? The more Jake thought about it, the more appealing the idea became. But it wasn't something he could simply accept right away. It was a new way of thinking, a new way of living, and that took time. Jake decided to visit the cafe again, hoping to speak to Lyra and learn more. It had only been a few days, but already he could feel a change in his thinking. He wasn't sure if he was ready to jump into the unknown, but he knew he had to explore it further. He had to understand if there was truly something to this concept of freedom in relationships. When he arrived, he saw her sitting at the same table, looking just as serene and confident as she had before. Her silver hair shimmered in the light, and her violet eyes sparkled with a quiet wisdom. As Jake approached, Lyra looked up and smiled, as though she had been waiting for him. "I knew you would return," she said, her voice soft but certain. "The journey has already begun for you, hasn't it?" Jake smiled nervously, unsure of how to answer. "I've been thinking about what you said. A lot. I don't know if I fully understand it yet, but I feel like I need to try. I need to see if this idea of choosing love freely is possible in the world I live in." Lyra nodded, as if she had expected this. "And what do you think, Jake? Do you think people on Earth could embrace the idea of love without rules?" Jake paused, thinking carefully. "I don't know. I mean, I've seen a lot of people struggle with relationships. They go through all sorts of hoops trying to meet expectations, but then there are also those who fall in love without any of that, right? They choose each other freely, without worrying about what anyone thinks. And it seems to work. Maybe there's something to it. I think it's worth trying." Lyra smiled warmly, her eyes lighting up with approval. "Good. You are beginning to understand. The journey is not about following others' expectations, but about trusting yourself, your desires, your heart." Jake sat down across from her, still unsure of what steps to take next. "So, how do I begin? How do I test this idea of freedom in relationships?" Lyra looked at him thoughtfully. "The first step is to look at the world around you and see it with new eyes. Begin by meeting people without the pressure of finding something perfect or acceptable. Get to know them, listen to them, feel what they are truly like, without the weight of judgment or preconceived notions. Let your heart guide you, not the rules that society has set." Jake nodded slowly, feeling a little nervous but also excited. He had always been afraid of making mistakes in relationships, afraid of choosing the wrong person, afraid of disappointing others. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that perhaps those fears were what had been holding him back. If he could just let go of those worries, maybe he could find something real, something genuine. Lyra continued, "You do not have to commit right away, Jake. The point is to explore, to meet people with an open heart and mind. If something feels right, go with it. If it doesn't, walk away. There is no shame in any choice you make, because it is yours." Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. For the first time, he began to understand that he didn't have to be afraid of making choices. He didn't have to worry about being perfect, or about fitting into someone else's idea of what love should look like. All he had to do was follow his own instincts and trust that his heart would guide him. "I'll give it a try," Jake said, a sense of determination growing inside him. "I'll start looking at people differently, without any of the judgment or expectations I've been taught. I'll try to see them for who they really are." Lyra nodded, her smile growing wider. "That is all I ask. The rest is up to you. The more open you are, the more you will learn." Jake left the cafe that day feeling a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. It wasn't that he had all the answers, but something inside him had shifted. He felt a new sense of freedom, a willingness to let go of the rules and restrictions that had always governed his life. Over the next few days, Jake started to approach relationships differently. He began to see people through a different lens, not through the filter of expectations, but through the lens of who they truly were. He met a woman at work, someone he had always thought of as just a colleague. But now, with a new mindset, he saw her differently. She was kind, funny, and had a quiet strength that Jake admired. He decided to invite her for a coffee, not because he was hoping for anything more, but because he genuinely wanted to get to know her. They talked for hours that afternoon, sharing stories, laughing, and discovering things about each other they had never known before. It felt natural, like they were simply two people who had found a connection. There was no pressure, no expectation of where the conversation would lead. It was just two people enjoying each other's company. Jake also met a few other people over the next week. Some he connected with, others he didn't. But the important part was that he wasn't afraid of making the wrong choice anymore. He wasn't worried about finding the perfect person or following some prescribed path. He was simply allowing himself to experience connection, without judgment or fear. One evening, as he was walking home from work, Jake ran into Lyra again. She was standing by the park, handing out flyers just as she had been when they first met. But now, as he watched her, he saw her in a new light. She wasn't just an alien from another planet. She was a guide, someone who had shown him a new way of thinking, a new way of living. Jake approached her, his heart racing a little. "Lyra," he said, his voice filled with a mixture of gratitude and excitement, "I think I'm starting to understand. I've been meeting people, getting to know them without all the pressure I used to feel. And it feels different. It feels real." Lyra's smile deepened and she nodded. "I knew you would find your way. Freedom is not about making perfect choices, Jake. It is about trusting yourself and allowing yourself to experience what comes naturally." Jake felt a surge of emotion as he looked at her. He realized that this was just the beginning of his journey. He didn't have all the answers, and he didn't need them. He was learning to trust himself, to make choices based on what felt right, not what others expected. And that in itself was more than enough. As Jake walked away from Lyra that evening, he felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. He had taken the first steps toward embracing the freedom of choice, and although he wasn't sure where it would lead, he was excited to continue the journey. Jake woke up that morning feeling different. The sunlight streamed through his window, but there was a certain clarity in the air that hadn't been there before. He sat up slowly, the events of the past few weeks running through his mind. It had been a journey, one he hadn't expected to take, and yet it had been exactly what he needed. He had spent days reflecting on Lyra's words about freedom in relationships, and now, as he looked out at the world beyond his window, he couldn't help but feel that something inside him had changed for good. His encounters with people, his new approach to relationships, had opened his eyes to a world of possibilities. He had met different people, some who sparked a connection, and others who did not. There was no pressure, no need to fit anyone into a mold. For the first time, Jake felt like he was truly experiencing relationships on his own terms, without being influenced by societal expectations or the weight of others' judgments. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that Lyra's message wasn't just about relationships. It was about life itself. About the freedom to choose, to live authentically, without fear of making mistakes or being confined by rules. He had spent so much of his life trying to please others, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't his, and now he was finally beginning to break free. Jake knew he needed to speak to Lyra again. There was so much more he wanted to understand, so much more he wanted to ask. He had been living his life according to the expectations of others for so long, and now, with this newfound freedom, he felt like he was finally starting to understand what it meant to live on his own terms. But there was still a part of him that needed answers. He made his way to the cafe, the place where they had first met. It felt like the right spot to continue this journey. When he entered, he spotted Lyra right away. She was sitting by the window, looking as serene as ever, her silver hair glowing in the soft light. It was almost as if she had been waiting for him, as if she knew he would come today. As Jake approached, she looked up and smiled, her eyes sparkling with the same gentle wisdom that had drawn him to her in the first place. "I knew you would return," she said softly, her voice carrying a sense of calm assurance. "You have been reflecting on the freedom of choice." Jake nodded, taking a seat across from her. "I have," he said, "and I think I finally understand what you meant. It's not just about choosing a partner. It's about choosing how to live, how to approach everything in life with the freedom to make our own choices. I've been thinking about how I've been living my life, and it's like I've been stuck in a cycle, following the rules that other people set for me. But now I'm starting to see that I don't have to live like that anymore." Lyra smiled, her expression both proud and kind. "That is the first step, Jake. To realize that you are not bound by anyone else's expectations. That is the freedom I spoke of." Jake paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. "But it's still hard to let go of those old patterns. Even now, I catch myself thinking in terms of what's normal, what's expected. It's like a part of me is still holding on to those old beliefs." Lyra's smile didn't falter. "Of course, it takes time. It is not easy to let go of what we have known for so long. But remember, Jake, freedom is not about being perfect or following a set path. It is about allowing yourself to make mistakes, to grow, and to find what truly makes you happy, regardless of what others think. Jake nodded slowly, realizing the truth in her words. For so long, he had been afraid of making mistakes, of choosing the wrong path. But now he saw that mistakes were a natural part of life. They didn't define him. What mattered was the ability to learn from them and move forward. So what now? Jake asked, his voice filled with a sense of purpose. How do I continue this journey? I've been exploring, I've been meeting people, and I feel like I'm starting to understand what it means to choose freely. But I still don't know if I'm ready to fully let go of the past. I don't know if I'm ready to make the leap. Lyra's eyes softened as she leaned forward. The journey is yours to take, Jake. It is not about being ready for perfection. It is about being ready to choose, to trust yourself and your heart. You do not need to have all the answers right now. Just take the next step and let your heart guide you. Jake felt a sense of relief wash over him. He didn't need to have everything figured out. He didn't need to be perfect. He just needed to trust himself and keep moving forward. I think I'm ready, Jake said, his voice steady now. I'm ready to stop holding back. I'm ready to embrace the freedom to choose, to live authentically. I don't want to live my life according to someone else's rules anymore. Lyra smiled, a warmth in her eyes. That is all I could ask for, Jake. To live with freedom, to choose what is right for you. No one else can tell you what that is. You are the only one who knows. Jake took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle into his chest. He had been afraid of making the wrong choices for so long, but now, for the first time, he realized that the only wrong choice was to not choose at all. He had the power to decide his own path, to shape his own future, and he was ready to take that step. I'm not sure what the future holds, Jake said, his voice quieter now. But I know I'm not going to let fear or doubt control me anymore. I'm going to live the way I want to live, make the choices that feel right, and not worry about what others think. Lyra nodded, her expression filled with understanding. And that is all anyone can do. Live with courage, live with authenticity, and embrace the freedom that comes with it. You are free to choose your path, Jake, and no matter where it leads, it will always be your choice. Jake stood up, feeling lighter than he had in a long time. The world felt different now, as if he had just uncovered a new layer of truth that had been hidden beneath the surface all along. He wasn't sure where this journey would take him, but for the first time he felt ready to embrace it with an open heart and mind. As he walked out of the cafe, the sun shining brightly outside, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for so long. He was free. Free to choose his own path, free to make mistakes, and free to live authentically. It was a powerful feeling, one that Jake knew would shape the rest of his life. He didn't need to have everything figured out. He didn't need to know where he would end up. All he needed was the courage to choose and the freedom to live without fear. As Jake walked down the street, he felt the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. He was no longer bound by the expectations of others. He was no longer afraid of making the wrong choice. He was free, and that was all that mattered.